Imagine a scene so ordinary that we've stopped noticing it entirely. You're sitting in a cafe, on a bus, or even having dinner at home, and you see two people physically next to each other, yet separated by an unbridgeable distance. Each is bent over a glowing rectangle, immersed in their own personal, endlessly refreshing digital world. They share the same physical space, but their consciousness is scattered across thousands of miles between news feeds, other people's lives, and virtual conversations. This scene isn't just a sign of poor manners, it's a diagnosis of our age. Never in human history have we been so connected. In our pocket lies access to the collective knowledge of humanity, the ability to communicate instantly with any point on the planet, and yet, never have we been so absent. We live in a state of perpetual but hollow connection, an era where we are constantly plugged into the network, but rarely plugged into the moment. We have traded real, deep, tangible presence for the illusion of being everywhere at once. Our mind, which should be the anchor keeping us grounded in the here and now, has turned into a weather vane, swinging from one notification to the next. The feeling of being completely immersed in a conversation, fully absorbed in reading, or simply present enough to savor a sunset, has become rare and precious. We have become masters of continuous partial attention, a state in which we are never fully anywhere and never fully connected to anyone. And here lies the deepest paradox. The technology that promised us freedom and total connection has instead plunged us into a crisis of existential distraction. We have lost the ability to be and replaced it with a compulsive need to do, to refresh, to respond, to consume. But what drives this all-consuming pull toward the screen? What forces, psychological, economic, even neurobiological, push us to choose virtual engagement over the real, tactile world? This is not merely a matter of willpower or bad habits. It is a systemic phenomenon, embedded deep within the design of modern life. In this video, we're not here to complain about smartphones. We're going to conduct a deep, multi-layered investigation into the reasons our consciousness has lost its anchor. We will examine how the attention economy hunts for our focus, how the neurochemistry of unpredictability makes us addicted to notifications, and how the decline of inner dialogue has made us fear silence and solitude. Our goal is not to demonize technology, but to understand the enemy so we can reclaim our capacity for a deep, grounded life. And most importantly, at the end of this journey, we won't simply offer tips. We'll reveal the philosophical importance of full presence. We'll see that returning to the moment isn't just a road to productivity. It's a road to meaning, connection, and authenticity. But before we dive into this exploration, I ask one thing of you. Perform an act of intellectual presence. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and most importantly, try to watch this video without checking your phone. Share it with those who, like you, are searching for a way to reclaim their mind from digital chaos. Let's begin with the most powerful and deceptive tool of control, our own neurobiology. To understand why we are constantly online, we must first acknowledge that our brain has been hacked. The reason for our relentless pull toward our devices lies in chemistry, specifically, dopamine. As we've discussed in other works, dopamine is not the pleasure hormone. It is the molecule of anticipation and motivation. It tells us, there might be something important there, go check. In the natural world, dopamine helped us search for food, a mate, or shelter, and the reward typically followed long, focused effort. Modern technology, however, has discovered how to artificially and continuously activate this system. Social media, email, and messaging apps use what psychologists call a variable reinforcement schedule. Imagine a slot machine. You don't know when the jackpot will drop, but you know it might happen on the next pull. That unpredictability is the most powerful mechanism for creating addiction. Every notification, every like, every new badge on the screen is not a jackpot. It is the sound that promises one. The brain, knowing that this sound might carry something emotionally significant, validation, news, praise, forces us to interrupt whatever we're doing. We live in a state of perpetual reward anticipation. This neurochemical loop, repeated dozens of times a day, gradually rewires our priorities. The brain loses its ability to value slow, effortful rewards like completing deep work and begins to crave fast, shallow, immediate stimuli. This brings us to what psychologists call FOMO, the fear of missing out, which is, in essence, just the behavioral expression of our neurochemical dependence. Our hand reaches for the phone not because we truly expect something important, but because an unchecked notification creates cognitive discomfort. It leaves the search loop open. Checking the device is not about getting a reward, it is about closing the loop, reducing temporary stress. Thus, we use the phone as a tool to manage anxiety, yet the paradox is that the phone's very presence and constant availability creates this anxiety in the first place. The consequences of this state of perpetual readiness are devastating for our presence. We fall into the trap of continuous partial attention. We are never fully with anyone, including ourselves. Our mind constantly scans the periphery, waiting for the next trigger. Even when we watch a movie, read a book, or talk to someone we love, part of our consciousness remains tethered to the phone. We cannot relax into the real world because we are always on guard, afraid to miss something in the virtual one. This mode doesn't just degrade the quality of our attention, it drains our cognitive energy. Constant context switching, interrupting real activity to check virtual life, leads to decision fatigue and burnout. We think we're resting while scrolling, but in reality, we are stressing the brain even more, forcing it to constantly reboot. Our reluctance to be in the moment is, at its core, nothing more than a neurochemical adaptation to an environment engineered for maximum engagement. We cannot be present because our brain has been overtrained in absence. Recognizing this dependence on fast chemistry is the first step in reclaiming control over our most valuable resource, our focus. But this dependency is sustained not only by our biology, it is upheld by an entire economic system. If neurobiology explains why we react, economics explains why we are constantly being bombarded. Our inability to stay in the moment is not merely a personal failure. It is the planned outcome of a business model we call the attention economy. In this economy, the most valuable resource is not oil or money, it is our focused time. The more time we spend inside an app, the more ad revenue it generates, and the higher the company's valuation. Therefore, the goal of digital platform design is to eliminate, or at least minimize, every moment in which we are not online. These platforms wage war, not only for our time, but for our dead time, the moments of boredom, waiting, and reflection that used to be a natural part of everyday life. And here lies the deepest damage, the destruction of boredom. Boredom is not a cognitive failure. Historically, it was the fuel for self-reflection, planning, and creativity. It is in the moments when the brain receives no external stimulation that it switches into what is known as the default mode network, the state where internal processing, memory consolidation, and the birth of original ideas occur. By filling every micropause with content, we deprive the brain of this essential time for self-building and deep thought. We have, in essence, traded the time for inner dialogue for the time of external consumption. Our hand reaches for the device during any moment of waiting, not because we seek specific information, but because we feel cognitive discomfort in silence, discomfort in having to listen to our own mind. We have learned to fear ourselves. Consider the medium itself, our smartphone. It is not merely a tool. It is effectively a portal to infinity that we carry in our pocket. Media philosopher Marshall McLuhan warned that the medium is the message, and today this means that the very nature of the device constantly reminds us of the potential for distraction. We are not just checking messages, we are carrying with us the constant mental burden of all the people, all the news, all the possibilities we are currently refusing while trying to remain present in the real moment. This creates a perpetual sense of scarcity and incompleteness. The phone has become the most frequent witness of our lives. It sits on the table during meals, lies beside us in bed, and accompanies us in every conversation. Its presence, even when untouched, creates a shadow effect. Psychological studies show that even the mere presence of a phone during a deep conversation reduces its quality, lowers empathy, and weakens the sense of trust between people because part of each person's mind remains reserved for the possibility of external interruption. We cannot be fully with someone when we can be with anyone at any moment. Thus, the problem of our absent presence is deeply rooted in a design whose purpose is to erase any boundary between our lives and the network. This is not chaos. This is a carefully engineered trap, one built to make the real world feel dull and the virtual world feel essential. We must understand that reclaiming the ability to be in the moment is not a matter of personal discipline. It is an act of resistance against an economy that demands we be permanently distracted. If the attention economy hunts for our focus, then social culture hunts for our solitude. In our race to be constantly present online, we have lost a fundamental skill necessary for a deep life, the ability to be alone with ourselves. And this is not about physical solitude, but about mental silence, the capacity to shut out external noise and turn inward. We have learned to fear that silence. For many of us, the smartphone has become a continuous external noise we prefer over the internal one, over our unresolved questions, our anxieties, our unprocessed memories. We fill every pause because being alone with our own thoughts has become unbearable. The paradox is that it is precisely within that internal dialogue, within that silence, that personality, values, and meaning are formed. The loss of this inner dialogue leads to serious cognitive and existential consequences. We no longer allow complex questions to simmer in the mind. Instead of contemplating, we immediately reach for an external answer. We outsource our memory, our capacity for synthesis, and even our moral judgment. Where once deep thought required time spent in solitude, today we wait for a platform or an influencer to provide a ready-made, easily digestible conclusion. As a result, we lose working memory and the mental endurance needed to hold and compare complex ideas without external support. Added to this is the phenomenon of performance authenticity. In an era where our lives are documented, our presence in the moment gains value only through external approval. We no longer enjoy a sunset, we film it. We no longer savor a concert, we broadcast it. We no longer live through a meaningful experience, we document it for future likes. The value of a moment is defined not by its inner substance or personal feeling, but by its viral potential. This transforms our lives into a continuous performance. We become actors in our own carefully edited drama, and this performance requires that we remain online, ready to record, post, and respond. If our worth is defined by external approval, then disconnecting from the network feels like disappearing. To disconnect is to stop existing for others, and that sense of threat drives us to maintain feverish, constant connection. This absent presence creates a profound loneliness in the crowd. We are surrounded by connections, but starved of intimacy. We know what is happening in the lives of hundreds of people, yet often have no idea what is happening in our own soul. We believe we are living rich lives because our digital footprint is enormous. But in truth, we suffer from existential emptiness because we have no time left for ourselves, for reflecting on meaning, for building the kind of deep, invisible connection that requires full presence. We have traded the quality of our attention for the quantity of our contacts. And that is the highest price we pay for perpetual connectivity. We have analyzed the systemic forces that drain our attention, neurochemical hooks, an economy that hunts boredom, and a cultural fear of solitude. Becoming aware of this struggle is already half the victory. But now we arrive at the most important part, the practice of returning to the moment. We cannot wait for technology to change or for the world to grow quieter. We must create inner sovereignty over our own attention. Our first act of resistance is conscious discipline and the creation of boundaries. Begin with digital compartmentalization. Designate places and times where your device is absolutely forbidden. The bedroom, the dinner table, the first 30 minutes after waking, the last 30 minutes before sleep. These are not merely rules of etiquette. They are mental anchors that signal to your brain that there are spaces where the only requirement is presence. The second step is dopamine reassignment. If our brain craves unpredictable stimulation, we must deliberately give it deeper, slower rewards. Set aside time for intentional boredom, a walk without music, sitting in silence, looking out the window. This retrains the brain to value internal processing time, restoring the default mode network. It is an act of courage to sit in silence long enough for the brain to stop panicking and finally begin to think. The third, and perhaps most powerful tool, is the training of mindful presence. Presence is not a state you achieve once. It is the skill of returning to the present moment again and again. When you drink your coffee, focus fully on the taste and the warmth. When you speak with someone, observe not only the words but the tone and body language. These micro moments of awareness are the repetitions that strengthen the muscle of attention. The more often you do this, the easier it becomes to return to deep focus in critical moments, and the harder it becomes for algorithms to rip you away from reality. The fourth principle is a shift in values. We must stop measuring our lives by the number of contacts, posts, and notifications, and begin measuring them by the quality of experiences, conversations, and completed work. Ask yourself, am I living this moment or documenting it? Learn to cherish a moment that was neither recorded nor approved. True fulfillment comes from within, not from view counts. Finally, we arrive at the fundamental truth. Returning to the moment is not merely a way to increase productivity or reduce stress. It is an act of love for yourself and for the people around you. When you are fully present, you give the quality of your attention, not the leftovers. You give the person you are speaking to your most valuable time. You give the world your ability to see it as it truly is, not as an algorithm has filtered it. Our attention is an act of choice, and that choice shapes our reality. When we let it drift endlessly through the network, we become absent ghosts in our own lives. But when we consciously choose to be here, we become the true creators of our reality. The most radical act in the modern world is to be here, right now. When this video ends, don't reach for your phone. Pause, take a deep breath, feel where you are. Reconnect with the real, tangible world that has been waiting for your return. You are the architect of your mind, and the most powerful thing you can do is bring your attention home. Stay curious, stay awake, and above all, be here.